All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Geopolitics and Money. Very excited to be with you. How are you?
Oh my gosh, I am overwhelmed by how much is going on.
I am not. I had coffee
Yes.
before I came here, but that's not about coffee.
Yes.
It's what type of coffee that I had.
Oh, what did you have?
I had the bulletproof.
That's what I have
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Mold-free.
Mold-free
guys.
coffee. Wonder
Mold-free
why I'm
coffee.
hyper, but it's a good coffee. Literally,
so
I'm not. We're not promoting them, by the way.
No, we're not. They're not a sponsor.
No.
Not, although that would be great.
That would
Hey,
be
Bulletproof,
great.
if you
Yeah.
guys want to be a
We'd be
sponsor,
happy.
fantastic. We are not. That is just personally what we do.
Yeah.
What we drink.
Anyway, we are very, very excited to be with you guys. We have a very interesting show for you today. But before we do this, please type in on the chat box what part of the world you are joining us from. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. So, on the other hand, we also going on Rumble.
We are also,
because
yes,
we promised.
Yes. We are doing Rumble
we promised,
after this.
So we're gonna be doing Rumble right after this one here. So if you would be interested in joining us, we look forward to having you there. So anyway, as I said, we got a very interesting topic we're gonna be talking to you about, and this one has to do with.
Okay, so this is multifaceted, but really we're looking at, is there actually gold in Fort Knox? Not just is there gold, but how much gold is there? Is the gold on lease? Is it actually in there? Are the serial numbers correct? Yeah, does it exist? There have been. So I have all of these wonderful things to show you guys, but there have been fake gold bars found in Britain before. I mean, it's a whole big thing.
And speaking of Britain, by the way, we will be addressing Britain as well, because the gold topic we're going to be talking about here in the US is also tied to what's going on in England. And what's going on in England, if you may know, their economy is going down the drain, literally. But that's not about that. It's about the gold that's been flying out of that country for a few months. And guess where that gold went? According to some, at least what I found.
Yeah.
Flew to New York.
Interesting.
Makes you just wonder, why would a gold from England fly to New York?
Well, so one of the big things about the gold all over the place, right?
Yeah.
It's not just Fort Knox. It's not just in New York. It's not just Great Britain, but the countries hold gold for other countries, and gold goes on lease to other countries too.
Yeah.
So it's not as simple as like, we have gold in the reserve. Even if people were to go to Fort Knox, which I'm very, very interested in, and the same with this gold that's coming out of Great Britain.
Yeah.
Whose gold is it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, because England to begin with, they never had gold. They stole it anyway. We all know. I'm aware of 2 cases of the Venezuela where the gold's been stolen, and also the gold from India. We gotta be fair. You know, and let alone to what they were planning on doing for Africa, the gold in Africa and so forth. So this is what we're gonna be addressing this within the context of the economic aspect right here in the US, given the inflation, the prices of goods and so forth, just to give you an idea of where things are. But we will start with the clip first from President Trump regarding this. Take a listen, please.
Okay, let's stick it back in here and press play.
We're going to go into Fort Knox to make sure the gold is there. Are they you know that we're going to go into Fort Knox. Do you know about that?
Sir,
that was a bad bump.
Are they going to eliminate more national security positions, civilians there?
We'll see what happens. But one of the things we do want to look, I mean, we hope everything's fine with Fort Knox, but we're going to go to Fort Knox, the fabled Fort Knox, to make sure the gold is there.
Where would the gold have gone? Right up.
If the gold isn't there, we're going to be very upset. We're going to go into Fort.
Where would the gold have gone is a very good question.
But which is true. It's because here's the thing. And of course, you have to have an understanding of the background regarding gold and how it's all evolved over time. We are currently working on bringing a guest. We're not going to disclose the name yet. Somebody who's a very, very familiar with the, what shall we say, the process of how this came to be.
Yes.
We're talking about the chronological history of how the few elites end up controlling the flow of money, which means they end up controlling governments' economies.
Yeah.
So we're going to have that author right here on the show.
Yeah.
We're working on this one here. So
Yeah. So that documentary actually specifically made me rethink my position on fiat currency.
yeah,
So we're gonna have a whole
yeah.
episode about that. But I've actually been very staunchly against fiat currency. That
Yeah.
currency really needs to be backed by something.
Yeah.
Something of value, right? Store of value, like gold, for example. But one of the most interesting questions that he brought up was who controls the gold? And I think that's really the question that we're asking here right now is who really controls the gold? There's a really important piece of this Fort Knox thing that is related, but is more important, I think, than Fort Knox.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, there's definitely the theory that there is either no gold in Fort Knox or a very small amount of gold in Fort Knox.
Yeah.
And then whatever has been shown, because I have a picture of like one of the only, I think it was like in the 70s where they like went in and, got to see the bars of gold. The reality is I'm not sure anybody could unless you really handled gold, you're a specialist at gold,
Yeah.
Faking gold, I think is fairly doable.
Yeah.
So even if people went in and saw the gold, making sure the serial numbers are correct, making sure there are no duplicate serial numbers, making sure there's the amount. Nobody weighed the gold itself. Nobody tested the quality of the gold. And supposedly with how much there is, that would be really a Herculean task to see supposedly however much there is. Okay, but there's a really, really important piece of this, okay? And so that is that the President Trump is trying to do this strategic wealth fund, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a big piece of this is the potential of reevaluating the price of gold or the price of the gold stores that we technically have. Okay, so gold, let me see, where is my chart? So gold was reevaluated last time at, I think, $43 an ounce. And right now it is valued at, it went to a high at a little under $3,000. But it's predicted to go above $3,000, right? So let's say that we repriced the gold that we have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's no longer the gold that's in Fort Knox or wherever is no longer valued at I think it's $42 or $43. Now it's valued at $3,000. That would give us a surplus of money pretty immediately. That would mean that the US government could actually borrow against that gold with zero interest or very, very low interest. And one of the things that could be done with that gold, so if that money was just kind of spent on whatever, that would increase inflation. And we saw that in 1973.
Yeah.
Okay, let me.
Yeah, that's why it's important to understand the history of how gold came about, especially after the U.S. decided to get sort of to back the gold, to get rid of the gold, to back the dollar. But the history of this also tied to really who is behind controlling, as they call them, the money changers.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the key word.
Okay, there's a bunch of pieces of this, but so a couple of big things, but this is a really big one. So let me show this clip from U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, let me show this clip from him. Talking about number one, he says all the gold is there.
Can you trust? Okay. Can you trust American politicians?
Yes, he says all the gold is there, but the sovereign wealth fund is actually what's important here about this. Like, yes, it's important that we have the gold. I don't know, even if Elon Musk goes into Fort Knox, I don't know that we're going to get the truth on that. Okay. Just flat out. Yeah. Because I think the consequences are dire if there's no gold in there.
Yeah.
If there's no gold in there, the US government and all of our money is backed by nothing.
Well, actually, yeah. And it's a reality that everybody knows so far. To those who understand the ins and outs of economics, our currency is backed by debt, basically.
Yeah.
And that was the whole reason why it is important to really understand this history of the evolution of how this money came to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that's why we are very excited to have that guest here.
Yeah. I hope he says yes. I really want him on the show.
Well, we're telling him the community wants to hear from you.
Yeah. So I reached out to him. Anyway, so let's listen to U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
And people are questioning it, is maybe remarking gold. Elon Musk, who's leading DOGE, was talking about maybe going to Fort Knox to make sure those gold reserves are there. That comes under your purview. Do you have any plans to visit Kentucky?
I don't have any plans. I can tell you that we do an audit every year. I can tell the American people on camera right now that there was a report September 30th, 2024. All the gold is there. Any U.S. senator who wants to come and visit it can arrange a visit through our office.
No, hold it, please. Hold it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lie. It's a lie. You know why?
Yes.
Because Rand Paul of Tennessee,
Right.
where the gold requested to go, and he was turned down.
Yes.
So what he's saying is lying.
I actually also have this tweet by Mike Lee from Utah. He says, as a U.S. Senator, I've tried repeatedly to get into Fort Knox. Fort Knox, you can't come to Fort Knox. Me, why? Fort Knox, it's a military installation. Me, I'm a senator. I go to military bases all the time. Fort Knox, you still can't come because you can't.
Yeah. So this guy is
absolutely.
lying. This guy is lying.
Absolutely. Okay, let's put this back in here.
When you were a hedge fund manager, before you divested the Treasury Secretary, you know the value of gold is right now versus where it's marked on a balance sheet, north of $40.
That was really garbled. Could you guys understand what
Now
she just
versus
said?
where it's marked on its balance sheet, just north of $40 an ounce. It's close to $3,000. Is it under consideration for this administration to revalue gold?
I think that somehow when we were talking about the sovereign wealth fund and I said monetize the balance sheet, I can promise you that's not what I had in mind.
Okay,
Yeah.
this last part is what I'm talking about, and this last part is actually really important. Now, he has said again that that's not what he was talking about, and that he didn't that's not what he meant. But I want to share this with you because this is important. If the United States were to actually take that money that would have so gold is revalued, right? So the gold stores that we have here in the United States, instead of being worth $40 an ounce, a little bit, it's a little bit more than that. I think it's like 42, 43 an ounce. Let's say that it was revalued to what it currently is right now at $3,000 basically ish an ounce. Okay. If that were revalued, that is hundreds of billions of dollars worth that we can take and potentially pay off debt. So in 1973, let me share this chart with you guys. And I don't know whether they're going to do this or not. He seems to think that they're not going to, but this may not be a bad plan. I'm sharing this as something potentially actually very interesting and very possible as a way to start paying down the debt. Now, having national debt necessarily isn't kind of the problem. The problem is because there's a big argument on national debt. There is the national debt. Okay. Is it not? Number one, it's out of control. So like, I think that's not great, but we're paying 80 something, I think it's $86 billion a month in interest alone
on the debt. Yeah.
So something that could actually happen is, let's see if I can share. So in 1973, they actually did this. They revalued gold from it was like 38 or something to $40 an ounce. Can you guys see this? I do not think so.
No, it's not. Here we go.
What happened then was that they just sort of paid for stuff, right? They just sort of bought things that they wanted to do. Then in 1973, you can see what happened because inflation went sky high. Like inflation was like out of control because they just basically bought stuff, right? They revalued it, I don't know, to like buy more things, which is not a wise expenditure of that money. But if one of the things that they did was that, or if what they did is that they paid off parts of the national debt. and bought back those treasuries, bought back the bonds that are at 4 to 5% interest. If they bought them back at basically 0% interest, that might be a very interesting way to start to take care of the debt without raising inflation, without necessarily bringing down the dollar. Like this is kind of creative.
Well, it is to a degree, but an average citizen doesn't understand this dynamics, because when the US issues bonds, where is the money for that? And if you understand the history of how things evolved in England with the Rothschild family, for example, and how this is how they do it. That's how they became the wealthiest family in the world back then. It's the idea that there will be this coordination with the government to issue bonds, even though there was no money there. There was no money.
Well, so one of the interesting things, and this is why this Fort Knox topic is actually really interesting, because there really are vast consequences. So, like with USAID and some of these other things, it wasn't that, like, it's important, right? But so far, Elon Musk says that DOGE has sort of brought back, I think it's 55 billion into the collective pot, right? And into back to us. That's not a lot in the grand scheme of things. Over the next year and change, they're looking to bring back $1 trillion. It's 1.3 trillion they're looking to bring back, which is substantial. That is a substantial.
They would be nice if they put it towards the debt.
Well, so what they're talking about doing is they're actually talking about giving 20% of what they bring back in money back to the taxpayer. So whoever pays taxes in, I think it's 2025, they're talking about sending, like, direct depositing money to every tax paying household out of 20% of whatever it is that they bring back. So that's not bad. Like,
for an average citizen, and we all are average here, don't get me wrong.
Yes.
It's kind of, let's say you give back $1,200.
Yeah.
Just on an average.
Well, that's what they did during COVID.
But that was like not, for families that they have kids and all that stuff. It's the idea of that. Basically, what this amounts to at the end is to really expose the massive corruption that exists in our system. And now you even have senators, members of Congress are involved. I'm going to share a picture with you guys here, if you allow me. Let's take a look at this picture here.
And while we're looking at that, what I just had on
right
this.
Here.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Let me just
go ahead.
share this with you guys at the stage right there. You're not going to see it. I'm going to make it bigger here. But can you guys tell me who is this guy at the top right corner? I know you won't be able to tell.
It's hard to see.
It's hard to see. If you can guess, he's a senator right now. Let me just see in the chat box if anybody's.
Also, the whoever tweeted this, that's such a funny tweet. Extremely rare photos of the U.S. Army seizing the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. That's hilarious.
Anyway, that guy on the right,
whoever you are,
that's Tom Cotton. He's the senator. What did just turn out to be about Tom Cotton? They found out that he was funneling money through USAID to his foundation or something, foundation, whatever that is. So just to highlight to you guys the idea of this gold, by the way, that was in Iraq. So I went to Iraq after this particular picture here, because I remembered it.
That's okay. Here, we're back.
We're here. So my point, guys, I had a chance to see gold with my own eyes in New York.
Right.
In New York City, there is the reserve there. And when I went there, it was underground. It was massive amount of gold. That goes back to your point earlier. Was it real gold?
Right.
Was it the Syrian? I don't know, because we couldn't get in because it was a gate. I was just in the alley, but I could see. And I asked the person in charge of that area, I said, can I ask you a question? And the person looks at me with eyes got this big, because they knew I'm going to be asking sensitive questions. And I said, well, you know what? To avoid putting the person in a dilemma, because there were cameras all over, I say, you don't have to talk. You just blink your eye.
Yeah.
I had to do it that way because I don't want to disrupt the person's
yeah,
life.
of
It's
course
his
not.
living. He
Right,
was living
right.
there. So I say, I'm going to just tell you the countries, and if you blink, that means yes. If you don't, that means no. So I'm going to, first of all, I want to ask you, how much am I looking at here? He said, you're looking at over $120 billion. Okay. And I did see the gold bars, like you're talking about massive space underground. And I said, is this belongs to the Western world, the Europe, Middle East? He blanked when I said the Middle East. I said, I'm going to ask you a question about the countries. So I start with Qatar. I said, Qatar. He didn't blink.
Yeah.
I said, Kuwait. And it was for a reason. I won't hide it from you guys. It was for a reason why I started with those countries first.
Yeah.
I could have started directly with Saudi Arabia. And when I said Saudi Arabia, the person blinked. So my point.
I mean, are we surprised?
Yeah, but my
right?
point. Here is my point, guys. And this is what I always say. Remember, we used to say, we're still saying it. Everything in geopolitics is connected. Economics as well.
Absolutely.
The last meeting of Marco Rubio in Riyadh to meet with the Russians, who attended the meeting with that? Beside the two individuals, the National Security Advisor and the President Trump's envoy to Middle East. It was another person there. And who was that person in America? He was the head of the Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Yes.
And why in Saudi Arabia? Because this is what I always say. There is nothing that happens in vacuum. Saudis had to get something back for them to host the American-Russian summit. And their wealth, because they're concerned about the gold after what we did to Russians.
Oh, absolutely. And they should be. And we had that conversation. You and I had that conversation immediately after the Biden administration was seizing Russian assets or trying to seize Russian assets.
Stealing it, basically. That's what it is.
That was a bad move in terms of long-term. That's a bad move because especially as a country on decline, what we kind of need is more friends, not more enemies, not more people who don't trust the United States. So seizing assets, because at one point or another, everybody pisses everybody off. Like that's just kind of how that works. And so it was a bad move. But yeah, I absolutely.
And you brought up that good point about seizing, and that's we're gonna detail in a rumble. We're not gonna talk about it here. We got some information regarding this aspect as to now what is being exposed truly as to why the previous administration was so-called sending our tax dollars. There were no money going. We're gonna tell you why. We can't disclose few things. You all know how it is. We don't need to be the dead horse, but we're going to be talking about it right after this on Rumble. So
let me give you guys the Rumble link. If you go to rumble.com and search Geopolitics and Conflict, you'll find us.
Yeah, we're still under that name, right?
Yes.
We didn't change it.
I'm not changing the name until more people know that we're changing it. So you guys don't see this change and be like, who is this?
Yeah.
So,
well, they will see your pretty face and say, that's you. That's Elizabeth. So it's Geopolitics in Conflict.
Well, what about your pretty face?
Oh, they don't care for me. Don't worry about it.
They do.
I won't worry about it.
Let me share this with you guys because I think it's crazy interesting. So this is from, God, I have a lot of tabs open. My husband always laughs at me. He's like, how do you have so many tabs open? I just need it. Okay, how many? Where is it? Well, now I can't find it. So maybe he was right. Yeah. But no, this is a tweet from... I don't know where it is.
No worries. No worries.
All right, David, you
let me share this one here first. We're going to share this picture at least to show this is, I give credit to this picture to Luke McGregor, Bloomberg. No relations to Colonel McGregor here. So this is the picture that they had about the gold in Fort Knox part. This is also part of it. We give credit to AP. That's part of that, but all this leads me to talk about while Elizabeth's looking at that is what is the link between the UK and the gold that's been flying out of the UK to New York. So, well, if you only know anything about UK, and I have to thank Hang in G, he's here. I saw you, Hang. Thank you so much for sharing that information regarding where the economy of the UK is, and it was very, very interesting. Let me pull up one of your comments, G, and you wrote it right here. I'm going to share it with you. And I quote, between 1980 and 2010, Britain was rich, one of the top 5 economies. The revenue for the chancellor came from one, the Thatcherism and Sadiq or Seeds UK privatization. Almost any institution in the UK that could be fully or partially privatized was sold. Two, North Sea oil and gas. 1980 to 2010, one summer, I sailed from Aberdeen to Oslo. I also I lost count of the number of the oil rigs in the North Sea. Good for Britain and Norway at the time. So my point in all this, I'm not going to read the whole thing, is that where you look at things now with the Prime Minister of the UK and thinking about sending UK troops to Ukraine, how pathetic when the economy of the UK is down the drain. Look at the poverty indicator. Look at the inflation indicator. But the point is, the question is pertaining to our conversation is why the gold is flying out of the UK.
Yes. Okay. So speaking directly to that, let me share this tweet that I now found. So this is a senator in Queensland, Australia. Let me share this with you guys. I have many tabs open. Okay. So it's a little bit hard to see. But he said the Bank of England should also be audited. They've been caught holding fake gold bars with duplicate serial numbers in the past. If one central bank is holding dodgy gold, how many others are? Okay. So this is a letter that he shared from the Reserve Bank of Australia. And if you look, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you guys. So right here, it says the existence of fake gold bars has been detected in the past by the presence of duplicate refiners' serial numbers. So very interesting. And this is from a senator in Australia. So everything, I actually really like X, and I sort of appreciate that it's kind of this wealth of this information that it's.
Yeah, it is. Except when they censor my comment.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was at a loss. I'm going to mention it when we go to Rumble. They censored that one. They told me, Mr. O, we're going to have to remove that comment. I was like, whatever.
They didn't call you doctor?
I don't care for them anyway. So
you earned it.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of Australia, before I forget, did you guys know that Albo, the idiot prime minister, been now referred to the ICG, the International Criminal Court, ICC?
Good.
Yeah. About time, but
Good.
But on a serious point, on a different topic regarding the gold, not on a different topic.
Yeah,
to get back on the gold, we're still talking about gold. I'm going to bring 2 key points, and that's how we're going to sort of continue on our conversation here, pertaining to what we can share on this platform. So the 2 points and I'd like to have your inputs on those.
Sure.
The 2 points is why Russia and China, a few years ago, we're talking only about 4 years or so. Remember when we started the big channel? And we were talking about way back then with the Ross.
And the plastic folding table.
I know.
That's shot on an iPhone, guys.
That's how we started.
That's how we started.
So,
like 700 videos ago. Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. I still look at that. But some of those videos just showed up last week. I looked at.
Really?
Yeah, 3 years ago.
YouTube
still because they matters, I guess. My point in that is at that time we talked about how both China and Russia were flying gold back to their countries.
Yes.
I was aware of a flight from Caracas in Venezuela to Russia. 2 planes full of gold flew to Russia. Yeah. I was also aware of a flight from Switzerland to Beijing, either Beijing or Shanghai, full of gold, belongs to China. And at that time, we were asking the question, why is Russia and China amassing gold?
Yeah.
Is something coming up? That's the first point I want to talk about. Right. The second point, and this will make more sense to you. Does this, what's going on, has to do with anything about the potential for Trump to prevent de-dollarization within BRICS? And is this why BRICS are amassing gold? Some countries there, countries that matter. India. Not India. Russia,
China,
South Africa,
yeah.
and that's.
Well, this is my personal opinion. I'm not an economist. My degree is in global business. So my personal opinion is, so in December, China sold another 57 billion in US treasuries and bought 4 billion in gold. Okay. So China is still in the process of amassing gold. One of the interesting things about BRICS and about de-dollarization and all of that is, the yuan right at this moment is definitely not a contender for a global reserve currency. And partially, I think that's also because China is sort of an unproven economy because it's on its way up, right? China has a bunch of problems, okay? Like, absolutely. But where China came from versus where it is now, even in the last decade, even the economic growth in the last freaking decade that China has had is unreal. It's an unreal upward trajectory. But the yuan is not in a contending place at this moment for reserve currency. I think it's only like 3% is held. It's really not a lot. Like, it's the US dollar is 40% and about 40%, which it used to be 80%. So there's that. But then the euro is like second, but it's like a really far second. And then the yuan is like literally like 3%. Like, it's really, really low. So, with China buying gold, this is my theory. Okay. It's just my theory. But with China buying gold, I think that they are doing the best that they can to put some kind of hard asset behind them. And gold right now, for better or worse, because we're going to talk about that later, because who owns the gold? It's a really important question.
Yeah.
But for better or worse, that does help China out to have physical assets, physical resources. And especially when, China's real estate market was the largest asset class in the world until it collapsed.
Yeah.
So I don't know. To me, what it looks like, in my opinion, is that China and Russia are actually trying to put something very solid. And I think it's one of the things that Trump, with this sovereign wealth fund, is sort of trying to do for the United States. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, countries like people need to have assets. They need to have things that stabilize their economy. They need to have things that for a rainy day, or even to grow or whatever, to have something really solid. And so it's very interesting to me that China and Russia and a bunch of other countries, Poland has been like upping its gold store. A lot of countries have been upping their gold stores. And that's my personal opinion as to why.
Yeah. Well, maybe this has to do also why that representative of the U.S. sovereign fund attended that meeting in Saudi Arabia. Maybe to calm the nerves of the Saudis, because Saudis were concerned about their gold here in the U.S. A lot of Americans do not know, and I'm going to share this with you. It's not a classified information. A lot of Americans do not know how much money the Saudis have in the U.S. economy. Literally, when I was in Washington, I find out that at that time, if the Saudis were to pull their money out of the U.S. economy, it was sinking. So now you think about, in terms, after what they saw we did to Russians regarding freezing of assets, which basically we end up stealing that. This is not about it. It's basically amount to theft. Plain and simple. There is no other ifs and buts, because one of those things like this is black and white thing. So, and the idea of, you start to think in terms of, well, how this is now going to translate into the global economy moving forward. And now you realize, I just read yesterday that China dumped more than $600 billion in U.S. debt, more so than what it did about 6 months ago. Makes you just wonder, the Chinese are getting rid of selling the U.S. debt. That means something major is coming.
It definitely does. So I did a deep dive, actually, though, into who owns the majority of the treasuries. Okay, because that's super important. And we talk about foreign entities owning a lot, and they do. Foreign entities, I think at the time that we did that show, which was like a few months ago, maybe, owned about 20%. It was like 22 or 23% of US debt. And it's actually US institution, it's companies here in the US that
Yeah.
own the majority of it. It's not individual people, it's companies inside the United States own the majority of the debt. So yes, it's huge that 20, I mean, that countries are dumping basically like large portions of US debt, but I think that that's also part of the reason that if and I'm not saying that they should do this, but if the gold were repriced, that's a wise thing might be to retire some of that debt. But yeah, I mean, it is certainly concerning. But you know, with the US's stance being so aggressively anti-China, that's not like a horrible idea for them to do that.
So we want to say thank you to MC.
Oh,
thank you very much for your super sticker. You wrote 1970s oil shock caused inflation.
Yeah, there's a bunch that contributed.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
inflation.
What do you guys think? If you will be kind, just for the community, if you can respond to MC, you know, just this is how we exchange ideas. This is how we learn from each other. So we'll greatly appreciate if any of you can respond if you happen to know about this particular topic. I do know that the oil shocked the oil embargo that the Saudi Arabia imposed at the time with OPEC. When you say Saudi Arabia, you say OPEC, basically. Shocked the U.S. economy, but also you need to understand at that time it was during the same time frame of the U.S. being pulled out of the gold standard, and all that happened. You know, once this is when you realize the impact of geopolitics on the economics.
Absolutely.
That just because that decision of the OPEC was mainly driven because of geopolitics.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about the prices, it's not about, no matter what they tell you, it's because what took place at that time regarding what was going on in the Middle East. And the whole idea, like I always say, if it weren't for oil in the Middle East, we won't be talking about Middle East or West Asia as it is known in certain circles. So this is why I want you to understand now where this is going as far as this gold aspects of it. And the main, even the most important question, what does it mean for an average citizen? Right here in the US. I don't care about somebody in Britain, I'll be honest, you know, because we got issues right here at home. And you look at now Germany, for example, where its economy is, Germany is going down, completely down. Olaf Scholz is breaking down.
Europe has a bunch of problems.
Yeah, well, because they bought into this notion of the Ukraine.
Maybe that's
we will talk about all that later on.
But I think that so like I said, for US aid, I think that's exposing massive corruption. But if there's not gold in Fort Knox, I don't think we're going to find out. And I think the reason that we're not going to find out is, and it may be like Elon Musk comes out and he's like, oh, well, there's slightly less gold or something
like,
but I cannot imagine him coming out and saying there's
like none.
Almost no gold or like nothing in there, because that would be horrendously bad for the country.
That reminds me of what happened back after 1902 or 1910. Don't quote me on this because I don't remember the exact detail. When the I think who was running for president at that time, and the person who was in charge of the monetary was taken out. They took him out. In other words, you know what I mean by that. They took him out. It's because that person was pushing for the idea of not to allow more U.S. bonds because there was nothing to back it up. And because the money changers or money, when I say money changers, you know what I mean by that. The individuals, remember, I didn't say institutions. I'm saying individuals who control the process of the monetary aspects because they became more powerful than the government. This is why most average citizen here, you tell him or her about Federal Reserve, and they will be like, what? Oh yeah, that's the government stuff. There is nothing federal about it. That's like FedEx, Federal Express. There is nothing federal about it. But if you know, especially for the history of the Federal Reserve, how it came to be regarding the Jack Island meeting and all that stuff, all that stuff was set up for where we are today. and the
Jekyll
control
Island,
over.
man.
Yeah, that's how they end up controlling the.
Yeah.
This is why I'm saying, how much can we be living in this illusion of, we are the richest nation on earth, but the richest on what? In what?
No, you're right. And I think so. It's interesting because, like, yes, people in other countries make less, but buying power is different, right?
Yeah.
So, if you make $1, let's say, but a meal at a restaurant cost 3 cents,
Yeah.
then you have better buying power than if we make $100 and a meal at a restaurant is $70. Right. So our buying power here in the United States has declined and declined and declined. And I think that that's part of what Trump is trying to fix. I don't know how successful he's going to be. I do feel that it's probably too late to sort of fix that decline. But I do, especially like with the Fort Knox conversation is happening for a reason. I don't know what that reason is. I don't know if it is a bigger meaning, like, for example, revaluing the gold we have or whatever it is, right? I don't know why the Fort Knox conversation's happening.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to see how it unfolds, because this one is big and important. It matters how much gold the United States actually has. It matters if our gold is on loan. It matters if what we're holding is Saudi Arabia's gold. Like, that matters. This is a fundamental. This is like a cornerstone. How much physical gold the United States has is a cornerstone of how successful our country is going to be in the future. If the reality is that everybody finds out that we have no gold, the confidence in the United States and the confidence in the US government, I think, will irreparably plummet. But if there isn't gold in there and Elon Musk figures that out, US government, do something about that and get some freaking gold in there so that the United States has something to back it up other than basically the force of our military.
Yeah, but it'll become a question, where are they gonna get that gold from? So I mean, we're gonna do what Britain did, what France has the third largest gold reserves in the world. France doesn't produce gold. Where do they get this gold from? Yeah. So we probably will end up doing the same by going, there is already a process now in the Pentagon regarding the plans coming for Africa under the auspices of, well, we need to challenge China. Yeah, you might want to say that, but also you are after the resources that includes gold in Africa. So for Britain to be saying, well, we have massive gold. Wait a minute, you stole that gold. That gold never belongs to you to begin with. Yeah. And if they were to do the right thing today, they would have released the gold that belongs to Venezuela, and the same one that belongs to India. Yeah. So you give, to the rightful owner, because but again, I'm saying something that would be impossible for politicians to do the right thing. There's no such thing.
It's not even, I feel like, the politicians. It's that the ultra wealthy don't want to give that back. Right?
Well,
even if we now know how it got there.
This is why, if you only know the history of how the Rothschild end up controlling the finances, including here in the US with the creation of the Federal Reserve. Look, guys, the bottom line to it, just whatever part of the world you're in, you will find out there is so-called central bank in your country, whatever that is. That should give you that should give you an idea right there. Central banks, even for the Central Bank of Europe, when Mario Draghi was in charge, he was having to take orders from the influencers regarding the financial trajectory. That is where that idea of the euro came about. Believe it or not.
Well, and the euro arguably did not do very well for a bunch of countries.
But it was the reason to create that currency so we can tie them down under the US, because that was the whole idea, especially with go back to the meeting that took place in Georgia The Jekyll Island. That's the meaning.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you
Jekyll
guys need
Island
to.
Man,
We're not gonna be talking
absolutely.
about this one here much
Although
because
maybe we'll do like a show on that whole Jekyll Island.
yeah, but if you do
situation.
that, you're gonna have to get into the really dark
Maybe
side
we-
of it.
I know. It's
That's
actually
we
really
do it on
rough,
Rambo.
man. We'll do it on Rumble.
Yeah, because there are some dark stuff
Well,
that if we
yeah,
don't,
it's rough.
because to me something like that, there are so many topics I would like to talk about. You just can't, because if you present only one side of the story, that leaves our viewers wondering. What it's kind of we can't do that. We will refuse to do that. However, if the possibility for us to address that on Rumble, to talk openly, because what I'm going to say in Rumble, I'm not going to say it openly, that X ended up blocking my comment, and the YouTube sent me a notification.
YouTube saying
They sent me a notification
from you
way back,
something?
way back, because
way
something
back.
I talked about the health issues. It was a health issue related, and I just shared it with the community. I want them to know, be aware. And they told me that is, you are telling lies and all that stuff. And he put a warning on the channel. Ridiculous.
Well, you know what? That's why Mark Zuckerberg went on that tour of like, sorry, we censored you
that
guys for all
guy.
that true stuff.
Yeah, and
Because
evil.
People now know that the stuff that was being censored, especially during the COVID years, turned out were true.
No.
And so like all of the social medias look really bad.
Oh, they're bad because
right
they are in
now.
cahoots with the government. You look at even Reuters. Reuters, we think it's getting a $9 million funds from the USAID to social engineer. Come on. That's to me where it becomes the question of doing the right thing. It says right there in their contract, social engineering. That's what the Pentagon put in. So, when you are given that contract, you decide, do you want to do this or you don't?
Yeah.
If you want to do it, you have your reasons. But if you do it for the wrong reasons, you bear the consequences of it.
Well, I
Simple
think
as that.
it's very easy
to
have an attachment to the narrative, because some people like this is just some part of the population, and everyone does this at some point, right? Where the only thing that we know coming into this world is what we've been taught, right? What we've been taught by our parents, what we've been taught by school, by society. That's how we know what's going on here. And media, especially legacy media, has been such an important part of everyone's life, whether you like legacy media or not, but especially older generations. Legacy media has been how you knew things. My grandparents had the news on all the time. They didn't get their information from the internet. They didn't have anywhere else to get it, right? It was just the TV and the radio it was a very small set of controlled legacy media. And so that's how they knew what was going on in the world. Now that we have the internet, and the internet it's controlled, but it's hard to completely control. And so that's why I fully believe that TikTok was banned, because TikTok spread information
that the politicians didn't want people to know. It's because they're going to start asking the right questions.
Right.
And that's why I always say, guys, if there is one thing the government fears, and I speak for our government here, even though I have no respect for our government, I'll say it straightforward. If there's one thing government fears, is well-informed citizens.
Absolutely.
That is so what you end up doing, you end up deploying the social media outlets to do the bidding for that. And that's exactly what's been happening here. So you look at now why Europe, it's up in arms because of what the vice president said. All of a sudden they're, wait a minute. It's because when you look at Olaf Scholz, for example, and I pick on him directly. Why? Because there is an upcoming elections, guys, on 23rd of February. Next Sunday. So, and they are nervous because if the far right ends up taking over, those are claiming for two things. We're done with supporting Ukraine, and we don't want to be part of NATO. Imagine that. And this is why Olaf Scholz went ahead now full board with banning Nord Stream 2 project. It shows you right there. It's because Syria, they don't want the big concern that it has always in Europe, and we start to have some conversation here about, but mainly in Europe was always about the institutions like NATO and the EU to maintain the control of the narrative.
Absolutely.
Because they didn't want people to start asking questions that matter.
And that's really the thing, David, is like the moment that people start asking questions
Yeah.
about what this is,
Yeah.
right? If it's not what the legacy media tells us, if
Yeah.
it's not what our government officials tells us, if that very narrow span of like, oh, this is your life in this tiny little box and everything is the way that we tell it to you. If you start questioning what that is,
Yeah.
you realize that you actually are the one who has the power. And that is absolutely right. The most dangerous thing is somebody who is free, somebody who questions what is and isn't real, what they do and don't want in their life, and what kind of world they want to create.
Yeah. Well, basically, they want just people to follow blindly. And to me,
Yeah.
that's
way easier to control.
Yeah, and that is the worst form of existence.
Yeah, it is.
If to me, and I speak for myself, is the worst form of existence if you are just following the crowd like a herd without questioning things. And that's not just applied to politics, that applies to your personal life.
Oh, absolutely.
Also, we're talking about big picture here, guys. And this is exactly where, to go back to your point about the mainstream media, you know, who's going to be listening to CNN now? Who's going to be listening to Fox, the CBS, you know, they're done for.
Yeah.
They're done for. But what the people needs to have is an alternative voice of truth.
Yes.
And this is, again, where I see the role, for example, of BRICS. To those who say BRICS is going to dominate the world, what are you talking about? They are creating an alternative. People will have to decide.
But I will say this about BRICS, okay? China is not exactly known for its freedom of speech.
It's
done. Okay, I will say that. Okay?
Yeah.
Because don't at me in the comments, okay? China is not exactly known for its free speech.
Okay.
And that's just a fact.
Okay.
However, I do understand that China used that level of control of its people to elevate them.
Okay.
However, as people get more elevated,
Mhm.
more successful,
Mhm.
they want free speech, the freedom to say and be who you want to be.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, like, don't hurt people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's like basic societal rules. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, don't be a jerk. Fine. Okay.
Yeah.
So so the BRICS countries are not all of them, but Russia's not necessarily known for free speech either. Not that I disagree in some of these cases, but I am a huge advocate for free speech, regardless of whether I like what someone has to say or not, because there are very many people that I don't like what they have to say.
Yeah.
But there are very many people who don't like what I have to say either. So
well, that's the price we pay for democracy.
It's the price we pay for freedom, for sure.
Yeah.
Freedom doesn't mean what the U.S. has made it mean, which is like, we're gonna bomb freedom into you. That's not what freedom is.
No, it's not.
What freedom is the ability to say and be who you want to be.
Well, here they are. I put a comment on X, and they took it out because so where is that freedom of speech?
Well,
what I mean?
I'm not advocating that we have it.
No, I know
I'm
what you
not
mean. I
saying
know
that
what you
the
mean.
United States has it. In fact, the last few years has really shown people that the United States does not have it, even though that is a fundamental right in our country.
It's because they just want to keep the narrative. That's exactly what I've been saying regarding why we are doing what we're doing to Europeans, because we're coordinating the message that we want to ensure that the masses do not ask questions that matter when they start questioning this idea of a freedom of speech per se. And it becomes because if they allow that means they're going to lose grip on the narrative.
No,
and they don't want that.
But what I'm saying, and I'm not attacking BRICS. I think BRICS is upcoming. I think it's doing a lot of good.
If they get rid of India, let's be straightforward about it. Yeah.
So I'm not attacking BRICS, okay?
Yeah.
But I am saying they're not the bastion of free speech So I don't know in
Yeah,
terms
yeah,
of,
but I challenge you on that right away.
okay.
It's because the notion is more for economics. Why will they care about the speech? Because to me personally, if
Yeah.
they are to focus on how we're gonna improve the economic conditions of people, where that the freedom of speech is gonna play into that.
Well, so I'm going to bring you back to the documentary that I sent you
Yeah.
yesterday. There are absolutely cases in which, so I will take from that example.
Yeah.
And guys, this is an awesome documentary, and we're hopefully the guy is going to come on here. But the greenbacks,
Mhm.
that were put in place were not backed by anything, was a complete fiat currency, but was regulated by the government to allow for everyone to have prosperity to a certain degree, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Not everyone wasn't like ultimately wealthy, but there was apparently enough for people to really thrive and succeed in life.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until Abraham Lincoln was shot that then everything fell apart. So I do think that, and granted, it's obviously a much smaller percentage of people. Like China is massive.
Mhm.
China has a massive population and a diverse population also. Like I do understand the challenges that China faced in bringing such a large and diverse cross-section of people up. I do understand that. But I do think, and I have to think, there is a way to raise people up without squashing their ability to speak freely. There has to be a way to do that, because otherwise that's like a very much like an ends justifying the means.
Yeah.
And if you think that, like, fine. I'm not here to argue that that's like a valid or not point. But I don't personally believe that giving up free speech is the only way to raise people up. And that might be controversial, but one of the things that I really want to do on this channel is invite you guys and us to imagine the kind of world you want.
Yeah.
Because right now, everyone's talking about how bad things are. And yes, things are bad. That is a fact. There are horrible things happening everywhere. But if you don't also imagine a world that you want to live in, we don't have a direction forward. And it's been interesting, like, as we've asked our guests that, they've been like, well, it's not really possible, whatever. And I understand that. But whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
And I want us to ask the question of what kind of world do we want to live in? Not what are we running away from, because that's been very clear. Like, we are very clear on what the bads are. They're very bad. What do we want to live for? What do we want to live towards? And that's a very different kind of question.
Okay.
And I have to believe that.
All right. We're going to have to end it on this note because we need to leave, and because we're going to have to be on a ramble. So we'll see you right away. Otherwise.
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me send you guys again. Let me send you the link to Rumble. rumble.com/geopolitics in conflict, user geopolitics in conflict. Okay, any final words, David, before we move to Rumble?
No, I'm just holding my stuff till I get over the other channel and say what I'm going to share with you guys what I wrote on X. So why not? This way we'll see. It still bugs me, because to me it was like I didn't say anything that will be worth taking down my comment. So, because to me was probably I said the truth and they didn't like hearing it. And under whose authority that decision was made. That's to me was like one of those. So anyway, hope you guys enjoy this, and we look forward to seeing you in the next 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right.
See you guys on Rumble.
See you guys
Bye.
soon. Bye.